What's the difference between being a high performer and being the default?
High performer is I'm great at my job.
And default is I'm great at everybody else's job too.
It's when your reputation becomes just give it to her, she'll handle it.
And it may sound like respect, but really it's about access.
Today, we are talking about authenticity in real life, boundaries that match your values, communication that doesn't come with a side of apology.
And by the end, Ronni Landeck is giving you the exact sentence to use when someone casually hands you something that isn't yours without sounding difficult.
So let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Claude.
And I'm Jess.
We are corporate employees by day, entrepreneurs by night, and work besties for life.
Join us as we explore how work besties lift each other up, laugh through the chaos, and thrive together in every industry.
Work besties!
Welcome back, work besties. This month we're talking authenticity and personal branding. And we're not just talking about the persona, but we're talking about alignment and how this can all help you. Today we're joined by a leadership coach, Ronni Landeck. She is a high-achieving mid-career woman who leads with calm, confident strength, providing those healthy boundaries and clear communications and sustainable ways to be successful. Ronni, welcome to Work Besties Who podcast.
So much. It's so fun to dig in and also to learn from what you're, bringing to the table.
On your bio, you listed how, as a teenager, you were reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, which kind of blew me away because I didn't think I even knew that book. What were you searching for back then, and what caused you to pick that book up?
So I love this question. Even before teen years, I had this hunger to understand, why are the people around me doing what they're doing? Why are they reacting? Why are some seeming so joyful and others always in struggle mode, right? And I think it was my desire to lead myself, clarity and why I was doing what I was doing and who I was going to play hopscotch with when I was a little kid and all those things, I think I always had this desire to know why I was doing things and why others were. So it all really lined up. And even to this day, I read for fun. It's still nonfiction, psychology theories, therapy frameworks, labeled personal development. But really, I reframe it as self-leadership, because if we understand our motives and the why behind our choices and habits, then you're able to live a really purposeful life in career, in family, in all the arenas that matter to us.
What are you reading right now?
This is quite the opposite of light reading. It's called Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors.
That's heavy.
Oh, you're not going to lie in your hammock and read that. It's an amazing book. Janina Fisher is the researcher and therapist. And as a coach, I'm not doing therapy, but just giving myself a really strong foundation, people experience, and also my own journey has a strong interplay into how I show up. I guess that's where I always like feeding that desire for knowledge. And that goes right back to the book you brought up that I was reading. That wasn't necessarily like the typical teenager choice probably either, now that I think about it.
So it sounds like you're a lifelong learner. You commented that you, at an early age, already started leadership. Can you walk us through how you got to where you are today?
In broad strokes, I would say I always found ways to take a challenging spot in life and turn it into something that was a great opportunity. And not always just an opportunity for me, but for those who I love. I was a parent at a super early age. Like, I was a teenager and still paid my way through college, got married my junior year, like did the things and had my leadership roles in my 20s. And what that brought me to was the ability to say, when I have other people in my sphere, how to bring out the best in them based on challenges that we're experiencing together. Perhaps I'm their leader, or perhaps at this phase, I'm coaching them and showing them new ways of viewing where they are, their situation. And then also making conscious choices to adjust either old habits of thought or old habits of how they're showing up and handling their time and their energy and all those things.
Ronni, it seems to me that you are what you would define as a high performer. Um, and as you've navigated your life with that, what are some life lessons or early warning signs that you would have for somebody who also is performing like you?
High performance, high achieving, obviously valuable, right? This is not a situation where we're waiting for something to be handed or for someone to build a door in front of us for us to walk through, right? It requires building your own door a lot of times, garnering the resources to get it built. But I would say the first red flag or first like danger zone to avoid is to be doing it for some reason that's external, right? So these things that we pour ourselves into, be it your career ladder or founding your business or even just working as a leader in your home, whatever it is, if the purpose behind it is something intrinsic and that feels very real, true, authentic, grounded, all those things, then you're going to have a much deeper well to pull from when stuff hits the fan. If it's for external reasons, I want to look like a good person. I want to please my mom, dad, whomever, or I want to have status because that seems like that is a definition of success that I've just blindly adopted, right? So all of those things are so like giving away your power in many ways, and that can lead to such things like burnout or people who've climbed and then they're like, wow, leadership's lonely. I'm thinking maybe it shouldn't be lonely. It doesn't have to be lonely. You're not alone at the top if you've climbed in a way that is driven by true meaning that you've intentionally chosen.
But what happened when you don't have those true meanings, right? But you're still going up. So then what happens?
A few things that I observe is people feeling disconnected, right? Disconnected from the daily work they're doing, disconnected from the people around them. I think that's a big symptom. And when you're disconnected from where you are every day, what's the outgrowth of that? The outgrowth of that can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be defaulting to things that numb you out, right? And that could be as simple as binging Netflix could be numbing out. I'm not saying it has to be the actual ism, but those symptoms seem very pervasive around us. It's not uncommon. And I won't say that I'm immune to that, right? I'm not immune to that either. Our mind has its tendency to want us to stay safe and go towards what feels familiar and calls that safe, right? So it's almost like you have to recalibrate and get clear and get still and have tools. Systems lead to this success that we're sort of dancing around the idea of. Systems lead to that, not willpower. Hope isn't a strategy. You can't hope for happiness and joy one day. No, you have to have a system in place that leaves you free to experience joy as you're working your tail off at your job or building your business or raising the kids and book bags are flying and lunch boxes are here and there. Everybody's late for everything that day or that week. You still can have joy and peace in the middle of the messiness. And I can attest to that, right? I did that. I worked in the career space and raised the children. And now I'm on the other side of it, reflecting back. I've been an empty nester now for 3 years. There's just a lot of richness to saying, if I know where I'm going, meaning having a vision, owning that vision, and also being patient with the process and patient with ourselves, that's where true thriving is going to happen.
Ronni, sometimes a person doesn't realize that they are not being their most authentic. Is there value in leveraging your work bestie for that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the work bestie role being a challenger, a cheerleader, and a coach kind of wrapped into the same person. That's one way to conceptualize it. And so you can have this really honest time and say, hey, here's one thing I've been working on. It's been on my mind. I really want to work on this. Would you be able to help me? When you see me saying yes to everything at the next meeting, go ahead and kick me under the table. No.
I love that. It's like that meme where you're next to your work bestie and she always gives the faces and you have to keep nudging her like, stop it.
Or maybe every time I use this phrase that shifts me into like being victim mode or blaming or not or making an excuse. When you hear me saying this, just say, hey, there's your word. What are you going to switch it to? So with a lot of love and I would say safety, right? Like safety in that friendship. I think there's so much ability to grow and lean on that. I love that concept.
Claude and I do that really well. There's definitely times where I'm overly stressed and I'm so in the weeds of the stress that I don't even recognize it. And Claude will just say like a couple quick things like, are you okay?
And likewise, right? It's a lot of time. And that's what I love at also to have those work friendship is that it goes vice versa. There's no, I give you this, you give me that. It's really like whenever it happens, when someone needs it, we are there. You know, it's
So
just
really,
fantastic.
I wanted to shift a little bit because you tapped into the word authentic and finding yourself once you are in your zone of authenticity, of course, corrects you from those other things. From your point of view, what do people get wrong about authenticity at work?
Authenticity at work does not ignore the fact that you're in a context, right? With a certain company culture and a boss or two who has their nuances that you're aware of. Authenticity doesn't mean I'm going to show these 5 sides of my personality no matter who's talking to me. That's the way to do it with wisdom, we'll say. And I also think authenticity also doesn't mean that if you don't match the expectations that are laid out around you, that you don't belong there. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you have to really find clear personal operating principles that keep you on track, keep you feeling, hey, I am making meaningful steps. My voice matters in this context, whatever industry you're working in. And then, the component of authenticity is owning how you're choosing to show up, but also protecting that with healthy ways of establishing boundaries. Boundaries about the time you can put to something, whether it's helping someone else or taking on a new thing on your plate, right? Or boundaries about how much you want to lose, So you have this idea of, you don't want to be insincere, but you also don't have to overshare all the time. Some of your strength comes from showing what's going to be helpful in that context, and you're still authentic. It's not changing what you are allowing to be true for yourself, but it's more like I'm presenting something in this setting to do my job well, or to support my team well, or to forward, our initiatives in a really effective way. So I would say keeping some energy on the inside as you're going forth with your work.
Sounds like balance and boundaries,
Definitely.
the combination of that.
And speaking about boundaries, what's a boundary that could increase executive presence?
Ooh, that's great. When you're put on the spot, perhaps in a work meeting or even just in a conversation at work, we'll look at that setting. A helpful boundary is to give yourself really intentional time. Take a deep breath, say, I want to pull up the most helpful way to approach this now that you've asked this important question. Give yourself a moment to gather the moving parts on the inside. Because perhaps in that intense moment, maybe you feel threatened, or maybe you feel like you don't know enough, or not sure which avenue to take in approaching it. So I would say the boundary of saying, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to say, it's a great question. Let me gather the best way to explain this. And then take your time and explain it. To me, I feel like that boundary of owning your ability to clear your thoughts and maybe even ask a clarifying question before you answer, those two things will allow you to still own the spot you're in. The person feels like you're there, you're not hiding, but you're also giving it a lot of thoughtful presence to what they're bringing to you.
I love that because instead of responding in a emotional manner, which sometimes doesn't really show an executive presence, by calming ourselves, rethinking, and just saying the fact really shows my presence. I love this point. And it's very hard, especially as women, to not just trying to blur it out because we think, unfortunately, sometimes I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or for me, that came with wisdom and age. When I was younger, I was thinking whoever answers first or quickest is the one that gets the most attention. And in a lot of corporate environments, they still do, especially more so now because everything's so instantaneous, right? We're like, swipe, swipe, swipe. I feel like I notice even more now the people that give the pause and take the time and say, oh, I have an idea. And then, like, there's this long pause, and then they come up with it. Usually do have the most profound insights or way to move things forward.
And all the eyes go right away to that person waiting for that, insight.
From a boundary perspective, do you have specific examples or maybe tactics that could help somebody in cases where they're trying to still be themselves in an authentic way, but have to graciously push back on the extra work?
In this setting, would you say it's coming from like their boss?
It could somebody at a higher level, doesn't even have to be
Yeah.
their boss, but at a higher level. Yeah.
Someone from a higher level is saying, hey,
Yes.
we're going to add this to
Yes.
to your responsibilities. A really effective formula is to share. Right now, my top 3 priorities are A, B, C. Where would you prioritize this new thing you're handing me or asking me to take on? Where would you prioritize this if these are my top 3 priorities? So it's now bringing that person who's asking you to do something, it's bringing them into the situation to have awareness of what you're working on, and how busy and productive you are. And it also shows you your stuff, right? You know what's important and where you're prioritizing your focus. At this juncture, they can say, oh, maybe they didn't know you had those 3 huge things. Or they might say, well, this rises to the top of all those because I have an urgent deadline, right? So then now it's a two-way dialogue. At the end of the day, what I tell clients is you're just talking to another human. This is a human to human conversation. So having that ability to bring forth information that's going to show them, hey, I'm analyzing this. I'm ready to do what's reasonable. Let's figure out what's reasonable together. So I would say name your top priorities and just say, where would you put this into that? Help me to see what you're seeing.
That sounds great because it goes on them now. It's not my choice anymore. It's their choice. And it's true, right? And that's put the balance on the way.
Well, I would frame it slightly different. I don't think it's their choice. I think it goes from being defensive to alignment. You're both meeting in the middle and saying, got it. Because many individuals report into multiple people and they could be completely different teams. So you can't always have the insight to say, well, you tell me what of these 3 things you want. You have to let them know, hey, I can only balance 2 out of the 3. So you got to drop one of your other things. It can't just be let them fully own it. There has to be the meeting in the middle too. So that correlates into going from the boundary element to more around dealing with confidence. So when our bestie community come to us, they comment about how they are looking for support or ideas on how to be more confident when they show up. So they know who they are, they know what they want to do, they know boundary pushing, but how do I consistently show up and don't have such fear of comparing myself to others? In your mind, what does that look like?
Confidence is a huge topic that we work on. When you go back to the root of what is causing them to not feel as confident as they want, that's where the actual rich conversation in the coaching relationship is going to happen. Because if they're not confident because they're not clear on the value they're bringing to that team or to this new role, that could be an opportunity to say, well, let's get super clear on what does winning look like for you. Are your goals that you feel are important enough to really make changes for? And how do we define those goals? And it's not always one goal, right? It's like maybe somebody wants to get a next level promotion. They don't feel like they have the confidence, but they have the expertise and experience. So the gap is not believing that they belong there, but the gap might be, am I clear on how to show up in order to get there? Who do I need to start talking to more? How do I need to present my ideas differently, different settings, even in an email, so things like confidence is going to be achieved by getting super clear on what winning looks like for that person. The other thing is the imposter syndrome idea, which all of us are susceptible to it. It's a sign that you're getting out of your comfort zone. And that's actually a good thing. We reframe it as the fact that you're not comfortable and this imposter thought has space to even pop up. It means you actually are in some area of growth and transition and challenging yourself. Growth is a must if you're going to be fulfilled, happy, joyful in life. So in that sense, instead of saying, I feel a little bit out of my depth, or I might look like a goofball after this presentation, the things that we tell ourselves. Instead, what I lead people through is first, what's the message you're feeling when you're freaked out, when you're having that moment? What is the actual message? What's the voice saying? Usually it's like, wow, if you mess this up, no one's going to ever trust you again. Something like that, whatever the person says their fear is. And then you shift that into, okay, let that be. We're not going to resist it. Just let it be. Acknowledge that's fear, and that fear is normal, natural. But here's our replacement message. What is that new empowering message? I let the client see what surfaces. What is the new empowering message? For one client, it was, I'm okay. That was her empowering message. I'm okay. So when she was in these hot seat moments, leading an international task force, getting in front of governments, she was like, she literally would tell herself, I'm okay. And then that gave her just enough clear-headedness. Her frontal lobe was now functioning. She was able to show up knowledgeable, clearly articulating her ideas. That was confidence. But we don't say, what's the magic pill for confidence? It's more like working back, going to the root, and then the outgrowth, the outcome is confidence.
How do you know what is that phrase that will make all feel all better? How do you find it? Because, for example, asking for a friend, some people that have passed the same job, they still know their value. They know what they bring to the organization. For example, I know what I bring to the organization. It's pretty good, but I'm still going to have this complex. How do you find that phrase that is going to make it better?
It's getting super still and allowing some space for that fear to be present. Like, that's a very vulnerable moment. It happens usually in a coaching context. Some people do it on their own in like a journaling time or that sort of thing. But get vulnerable, get honest with ourselves. Own the fact that, hey, we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be seen as insignificant. Whatever those core universal types of fears can be. And then you're literally showing yourself self-compassion. So super powerful principle. And I always end up going there with clients is the practice of self-compassion is sort of like the example of if your best friend said, hey, I just had the biggest mistake at work, and now I'm going to have 5 difficult conversations because of it. Would you say to your best friend, oh my gosh, you're such a loser. What's wrong with you?
No.
Right. However, what do we do when we make a mistake? Quick to attack ourselves in thinking, right? Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? You'll never get it right, right? Self-compassion is a muscle where you build it, and it is directing that same compassion towards yourself that you would offer to your best friend. Kristen Neff, her career is really focused on research. She's a psychologist around self-compassion and the benefits to the individual, and think about it, to the organization if the individual is practicing this. So you find that phrase, you can call it a power phrase, by owning the fear, recognizing it's there, but then also being self-compassionate in that moment. And the true message is the one that comes to the surface. Here's one: you've done the best you could with what you had available at that time. The knowledge, the resources, everything at the time, you did the best you could, That's very self-compassionate. And saying that to yourself can start to heal some of those old, things that you kick yourself for, right? And that muscle gets stronger the more you build it.
It doesn't have to be the same though, right? Like you could consistently change it.
It could change from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's our minds are beautifully creative. They can be creative about putting ourselves down, right? But they can also be really creative about nurturing the part of us that deserves to be nurtured just by our birthright, Great questions.
Thank you.
I just keep saying, I've got this. I can do this.
I know my worth.
I know my worth.
But I know my worth. That's the sad part.
Well, that's the thing. It's the next part. I know my worth. They deserve to hear it, or something that pushes you to just say it, and then you don't feel as nervous or whatever the trigger is for you. It sounds like it's going to evolve too, right? You're always learning. As humans, every
thank
day
God.
are constantly learning.
Oh, totally. I always say to my team, we are always here to learn because I even learn every day. Otherwise, it's boring.
Right.
Exactly.
Ronni, one of the things that you had in your repertoire was source framework and how that can help women stay aligned when they are under pressure situations.
It's a very flexible framework. And when I first came up with the components of it, I didn't realize how much it was going to flex with different phases of what women are working on in their career or in their life, or even me personally, what it meant when I first thought of it. So that's what I love about the framework, is it's not prescriptive. It's more like, let's look at where you came from, what's important to you, and what do you envision? What's your bigger picture? So then we line that up together. And everyone's values are different, everyone's gifts. We take into account the individual in these moments. So here's the gist. Each letter is a piece of a framework. It's not a linear type of practice. So S is self-awareness, self-exploration, and it has evolved into self-leadership. That's the ability to, manage those emotions and even manage the voices that want to hold you back, or adjust those old beliefs that don't serve. So first, it's recognizing what are those beliefs that are limiting me, and then rewriting our view of our story. When you asked what brought me to where I am in my life, if you asked me my story a year ago, it would be a different narrative. Same life, same events. We shift our narrative to mean different things, and we do that with intention when you're working with me on your goal. So the S is self-leadership, self. And then the O is openness. Are you open to exploring new habits of thought, new ways of extending yourself, and being willing to become uncomfortable with uncertainty? Uncertainty is around us, but that's one of the fears, is we're grasping for something that feels predictable, feels controllable. But in reality, if you can say change is the only thing I can count on, change is the only constant, now you're not going to be caught on your heels when the company restructure happens. You're more resilient and with a stronger response when you have this openness and these habits that we build. And it is different for each person. Okay, the U is upward, looking at your purpose, something higher, a higher power, a higher purpose, the spiritual component of what we're doing. And when I say spiritual, it's not like a religious practice per se. It doesn't have to be. It's more like the meaning and what really makes you dig deep when it's time to dig deep. The U is upward. And then the R, rest, revive. And I thought of this more than 5 years ago. So it's not, hey, hustle culture, not even a reaction. It's more the actual instinct of resting, the instinct of giving yourself 1 minute of your eyes closed per hour. That does wonders for your brain function, wonders for your productivity. So little things that people hadn't thought of. But then if you start practicing some of these things, it makes perfect sense. I kind of on some level knew that I needed this, right? And then you're doing it. So rest, revive. And then C is community. We are taught to be self-reliant. We're taught to figure things out and be independent. However, the true thriving in life comes from doing it in some sort of group, right? Maybe supporting other women. Maybe it's something completely social and not work related, but building community that uplifts you is a big component. And then in the career goal aspect, it can be networking, right? How some men and women have this aversion to networking and showing up in this way. So sometimes the C, the community building, is networking that way too. And then the E is execution, because action is what brings clarity and confidence. And the Rumi quote that was, as you start to walk on the way appears, right? So sometimes taking that really bold, courageous action without really knowing exactly how it's going to look, that's where the gold is. Like that's where the good things start to happen. So I've helped women who they thought they were coming to me for feeling like they were low energy and maybe burning out. At the end, in the course of working with me, they're like, I really want to start my own consultancy. I want to do my own thing. And I've never really knew where to begin, or they had the belief that they could, but something was standing in the way. Action brings the clarity, brings the confidence. My coaching, creates that really catalyzing but safe spot to go, let's go for it. Like you want that for a reason. That dream's been there for a purpose, and it's okay. And it's not too late, and all the things.
Amazing. It's a great way for you to frame it up. That is impressive. Thanks for sharing that. We wanted to add, what is that difference between being a high performer and being the default?
The main difference between being a high performer and performer by default is that you're doing it in a way that is sustainable for you over time. Not just like, Ronni had a great September, but now she can barely get to the table on time in December because she's all over the place. So no, it's sustainable over time. And to be sustainable over time, your output has to come from a place that honors our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our relational strengths. I keep touching back on that because that really is the core of being strong and solid, and people knowing who you are and what you stand for and what they can count on you for, So I would say the sustainable part comes from looking big picture, what breeds holistic well-being in all the zones as an individual, so that way you can lead with clear, decisive presence, so that you can execute on the things that people are counting on you for.
Ronni, how can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and then also my website, it's ronnilandeck.com. So RonniLandeck.com. And then you can send me a message from there, and I'd love to hear from anybody. Questions, feedback, all the things. It's all exciting, and it's part of the learning journey. So thanks so much.
Ronni, it was so insightful, and thinking about the source, also that little voice that you need to amplify.
That's right.
So, work besties, if this episode resonated with you, share the episode. And please like and subscribe. Bye. Remember, whether you're swapping snacks in the break room, rescuing each other from endless meetings, or just sending that perfectly timed meme, having a work bestie is like having your own personal hype squad.
So keep lifting each other up, laughing through the chaos, and of course, thriving. Until next time, stay positive, stay productive, and don't forget to keep supporting each other.